Simon Sinek talks about in the military, you sacrifice your life and you get medals. In the corporate world, you sacrifice others and you get promotions, right? And
Right.
there's a poem by Lao Tzu. At the very end, it says, of the best leaders, when the task is done, the job is complete, the people will say we did it ourselves. This isn't about me.
Today on the Servant Leadership Podcast, we welcome Josh Block. Josh is the former president of Block Imaging, a medical imaging equipment company that grew from about $30 million to over $200 million under his leadership. What makes Josh's leadership journey so unique is how he suddenly went from sales rep to president in a single weekend at 29 years old. Out of this unexpected crash course in leadership, Josh realized that the speed of the leader is the speed of the team. So he built a simple framework he calls the 3 T's: together, thoughtful, and transparent. In his book, People Matter at Work, he unpacks the 3 T's and challenges leaders to see how their leadership shapes culture, performance, and the people around them. Join us and learn how the most successful companies in the world are building from the inside out. Josh, thank you for being on the Servant Leadership Podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
You fell into running a company in an absolutely crazy way. Talk a little bit about your journey and what led you to leading Block Imaging.
Yeah, so was a sales rep in Muncie, Indiana. Thought we'd live there forever. We're living in the inner city, had rehabbed some homes, and we're doing all sorts of really fun stuff there, and decided to pick up and move our family to Lansing. Thought I'd be in a sales rep, maybe be groomed into a leadership role over 5 or 10 years. And within 4 months, we had a family emergency and went from a Friday as a sales rep to president on a Monday. So I was 29 years old. Company was about $30 million in revenue. And that was the start of my leadership journey.
I mean, how did you handle that conversation that weekend as you're trying to figure out, like, what in the world did I just fall into?
Well, it gave me purpose, like, oh, maybe this is why we moved to Lansing. So that was the positive. I remember one sleepless night, staring at the ceiling, knowing Monday morning was coming, and just feeling so young. I think that was probably one of the parts that I don't think I could grow a beard like I do now and didn't have as many gray hairs. But that whole idea of, like, what does it look like to lead knowing so little, right? I mean, there was so much that I didn't know very much about. And so, like, we're starting with humility and going, hey, we're going to need to row together to move the company forward. And so, yeah, it was one sleepless night and a lot of humble pie at the beginning.
How did they decide on you becoming president versus, didn't you have other siblings and stuff maybe in the business?
Yeah, I have 2 older brothers in the business and 1 younger brother. And you'll have to ask my dad that question when you talk to him. But yeah, each of us have a different skill set and gifts. And to this day, 3 of us are still in the business 15 years later. And so I'm incredibly grateful for the way each of those 3 brothers have supported not just the leadership of the organization over the last 15 years, but ultimately the writing of the book as well.
Wow. I mean, when people talk about family business, right, which Block Imaging truly is a family business, that comes with a lot of connotations, good and bad.
Sure.
Talk about both the good and the bad.
Yeah, I mean, the hard part is that most people look to people with the last name Block and they immediately do what they say. And one thing that our family has really sought to do is operate in our roles, is that one of my brothers oversees our women's health team. One of my brothers oversees equipment sales, and another brother was in project management. And yet just trying to, our family, just, I'm grateful for their humility of just operating in their role. And each of us have done that, including myself up to recently transitioning from a president role to an advisory role. And so again, just really trying to submit to strengths and protect weaknesses is something we talk about a lot.
Wow. So the company over the last 15 some years has grown like crazy.
Yeah.
It's been unbelievable from the outside, even just to think of the kind of growth you've been through.
Sure.
That led to a book. But talk about, before even the book, like,
how did you actually grow so substantially so quickly?
Yeah, so we've moved from about 30 million in 2011 to 215 million today. And the book is really written out of this belief that, like, what if we could create a place where people love to work? And not because it's easy, but because I'm challenged to become a person I never dreamed of. And so that was really the question in 2011. And that has led to creating a thriving team culture, people who take ownership. And that ownership is what has led to people serving customers and expanding the solutions we offer, and ultimately the growth that we've experienced.
Did you know you were going to write a book as this was growing?
No way.
How did that even come about?
I mean, the three T's that I talk about in People Matter at Work, the first is together, and together was a necessity. Because of what I didn't know, it was like looking to the people and saying, what would you do if you were in my shoes? And there was no way to fake it. I mean, it would have been an abysmal failure. And so it was forced humility. And this idea of, like, together's the first T is working together to sharpen any decision of consequence. And we're not going all the way to democracy, but we're certainly not dictators. And then the second T was something that was within my core. And I didn't even really know where it came from, but this word thoughtful. And everybody tries to be thoughtful and nobody tries to be haphazard. But like 5 years in, after trying to make thoughtful decisions, I came across like a dictionary, and it said, use careful consideration for the needs of others. Like, what does it look like for every decision? I have a corner office today, and I have a comfortable chair, and I have the temperature. I have a thermostat in my office, all those things. But like, what is it like to be on the other side of a decision and care about the things that I used to care about or are important to the people I'm leading? So that was thoughtful. And then the third one that I tripped into was transparent. It's just so many leaders hold so much back from their people. And it's really a picture of trust. Do we trust you enough to have information? And so transparency. But no, at the beginning, there was not a book. It was 10 years in that I started to feel like a tap on my shoulder that, hey, this might be a story we're sharing with lessons and mistakes. And then ultimately kind of the principles we've carried to not manipulate people, but really to embody my belief that people matter more.
When I first bumped into you, you were on a stage in Orlando talking about your story a little bit. And one of the things that I was thinking was, I wonder how many people think they're doing these things well.
Sure.
But really, the people who they're leading think that they're not doing it well at all. Have you wrestled with that at all?
Yeah. And anytime I do a keynote, I'll ask the leaders, like, how many of you care about your people? Yeah. And like 99% or 100% raise their hand. And yet, if I were to take the people they're leading and say, how many of you feel cared for? I don't think it'd be 100%. And so this book really is seeking to close the gap between intention, my desire and my care, and actually implementing, or my impact on you is, how do we close that gap, especially in the stress of quarterly returns and performance goals and metrics and KPIs and all that sort of stuff. How does my care shine through in moments really big and sometimes really small?
What are some ways you've seen that work at Block or with other people that you've been advising?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's slowing down and moving at the pace of people. And every one-on-one that takes place for years and years, it's a question that's drawn from the coaching habit. And I absolutely love it is, what's on your mind? What's on your mind? And what I love is it brings personal and professional, and you never know what people are going to say. But I think once people say whatever's on their mind, which sometimes is their daughter has a softball game, sometimes a team member that I talk a lot about in this book, Emily, she has a scan tonight to learn about her cancer, right? So she's been battling cancer for 7 years, and she is going to find out whether she's going to be treated again or whether she can continue forward with the plan that they're on. And it's like an awareness of what's going on in Emily's life is so significant from an empathy perspective. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to talk about performance. It does. She leads our parts sales team. There are lots of things that are important there, but just seeing the humanity. And I was on a podcast recently where they're talking about head counts. Yeah. Seeing people's heads. Like, I don't know, maybe call them hearts or something like that. But I mean, to start with people is that just understanding people's stories. And with a team of 400, like sometimes I even have this imaginative empathy is I don't know, I know a small fraction of what's going on in people's lives, but just imagine Like just imagine in the marriages, in the children, in the healthcare situations, in the financial stories, in the greater family, what people are going through. And it really does impact the way then we tackle business operations and strategy and conversations.
It's like a lot of people listening to this podcast and that have listened for a long time, they're thinking about this through the lens of servant leadership, right? And talking about how people matter at work. That's the epitome maybe of servant leadership, or the starting point. As you thought through this book, it was going to come up with your team that you're going to write it, and some of them were going to be involved in it.
Sure.
How did that conversation go, telling people, I think I care for you well, I think I'm writing a book for what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a 6-year process. So, many of the team members have joined since I started writing the book. But one of the pieces, as I share in the book and we talk about in all team meetings, one of the most challenging parts of pursuing a healthy culture is the only thing worse than working for a toxic organization is having a toxic experience at a healthy organization. Because then you're kind of this one, the more people kind of beat their chest with, oh, we're healthy and we're great and we're strong. And so for me in the book and also in person all team meetings is we're imperfect. Even with extremely high engagement, like 97% plus, when we get those results, which is really my report card, we want to know about the 3% who are struggling. Why? Where? And we really, even though the surveys are anonymous, we really want to invite people to the table, because the only way we can solve and close the gap is if we know who those people are. And so I would say that rather than like celebrating the 97%, it's standing in front of the team and just saying, we're imperfect. Money matters more would be a way easier mission, because you just put it in a spreadsheet, it calculates sums. People are complex, and it is a mission. Those two words, people matter, which is the heart of our mission. They invite us to be better every day. They challenge us, and we know that we will never arrive.
Wow. Explain at a high level for listeners what the company does.
Yeah, so we started as a refurbished equipment organization. So MRIs, CT scanners, mammography, C-arms, X-ray, anything in the world of imaging or radiology. And then as we grew, we moved into the parts space. So we would actually tear systems down, test them, validate them, and then resell parts. And then, as I'm reminded by a quote by Truett Cathy, is that if we get better, our customers will demand we get bigger. And so our customers were asking us to get into service. And so we have service contracts. And then we were acquired in 2023 by Siemens Healthcare and Common Spirit Health, a joint venture that has created some enormous synergies, allowed us to double in size. But the short answer is we're in radiology and imaging, equipment, parts, and service.
So when people are showing up in this world with the 3 T's in mind, how do you see them live this out differently than maybe if they were in another industry?
Yeah, I mean, together, right? The whole idea of this apex leader who's a cowboy in silos, and I mean, together invites us into sharpening ideas all the way to the very end, sometimes being the last sighting in of the rifle before a decision's made. Thoughtful. I mean, there are just so many situations in people's lives. I share about some in the book where they're just dire situations happening all the time. All kinds of struggles, from children's diagnosis. I think of health, and we're in healthcare, so it's just a conversation we're having all the time, and especially as you get older. So we see thoughtful as like slowing down and meeting someone where they are when they're going through a difficult time, celebrating when we're getting ready for Valentine's Day or whatever it is. And then the last is transparency, is just sharing openly. And what we've seen when we do that is it leads to people feeling safe, seen, and successful. And there's even if you follow Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like safe, seen, successful is really what we've seen experienced. And then the last piece of the we cycle that I talk about in People Matter at Work is that when people feel safe, seen, and successful, trust builds, ownership deepens, and then generosity grows. And when I say generosity, they give back, they invest, they act like an owner. And then when they do that, it lightens the load for the leader. And so this isn't really a book that says leaders just work harder, carry more, increase pressure. It's really, if we do this, it starts to spread the burden across the organization.
Yeah. I know you talked about thinking differently, but are there some exercises that you do as a team to help flex any of those T muscles?
Yeah, one of the pieces is Block University. Everybody who joins our organization hears about our history and our culture, why we chose them, and here's kind of the vision of where we're going. So Block University is really key. As part of that, everyone reads Leadership and Self-Deception. It's a book written by the Arbinger Institute. It's the only book that everyone at Block Imaging reads, and we go through a book club at the end of Block U. Wow. The second thing that stands out is to create a question-asking culture. One of the things that was unique about my relationship with my dad is I would have the courage to ask him questions. Why do we do it this way? Why do we go here or there or whatever? And that led to more context, that then led to better questions. And so I think when you do have a question asking culture, I talk about in the book, just a bunch of benefits come. Every all team meeting, every one-on-one that we have, we are creating open space. And kind of, some people will say, well, I created open space and nobody asked questions. And it's like, no, it's my expectation of you that you ask questions. And if you ask people to ask questions and are expectant, they will ask questions. And then if you answer them honestly, you will eventually have a question asking culture.
Wow. What was it like engaging in this, knowing, like taking over for your dad? What was that relationship like?
Yeah, so we have different styles, and I think it's fascinating to look at company life cycles and what it took to bring a company from 0 to 30 million, and then to go from 30 to 100, and then ultimately to double in the last 2 years. Is different skill sets are needed, right? Kind of the cowboy at the beginning, the aggressive, like what they talk about, the founder's mentality, and then you need like this stabilization in the midst of growth, and then ultimately need this professionalization. And so, yeah, it's been an interesting ride, and I take joy in what he has done to get us to this point, and then he takes a lot of joy in what the second generation has done to grow us to where we are today.
How do you think about like future generations entering the business, or even just how other people should be thinking about future generations?
Yeah, I think about family businesses a lot. I think the acquisition gave us a incredibly cool opportunity to grow. We also own a mobile MRI and CT business called Cube Mobile Imaging. It was Block Mobile Imaging. We couldn't have two Block Imaging. Yeah. So we decided the cute way was to move it from Block to Cube. And so my thought, that's a business with 30 mobile MRIs and CT scanner systems. And I can see that being a business that potentially one of the blocks, my parents have 25 grandkids. Wow. So I can see the family kind of leading that forward into the next generation.
Wow. How do you keep such good, and I know you talked about the humility that all of your generation have had to step into, and thankfully took well. But when you talk about how the family just continues to expand, how do you do that well and keep everyone aligned missionally, like family missionally?
Yeah. So for me, one of the things that is super helpful is to dream about the future. And I think of it through the lens of richly imagined future or future memories. This concept that future memories are as important as past memories. And so we talk about some people might call me crazy, but this vision of like, what do I want my daughter's wedding to look like? So she's 18 years old today. And when she was 12, I began to draw, what do I want that day to look like? What do I want our relationship to be? What do I want my relationship with my wife to be? What do I want my relationship with our team to look like? I've had the privilege of marrying 2 of our team members, not marrying them, but marrying them, being the officiant. And I've just desired those sorts of relationships. But ultimately, looking at the future in 5 or 10 or 15 years, what do I want that to look like? Because those sorts of visions, then we can reverse engineer, and what are the sorts of actions and attitudes and behaviors that I need to walk into to make that a reality?
Wow. I love that. I've never even thought of that. As people are listening to that, they might also be thinking, boy, that's a really good idea. When you envision those visions of, let's say, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, how often are they actually where you end up? Or is it more like, hey, this is the season we're in, I'm envisioning this and we're moving towards it, but things change?
Yeah, things change, but I think that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And this idea of like, I'm way beyond to be on this podcast, to be sitting with this book right here, to have a team of 400, to have an 18-year-old in college. I mean, just unbelievable, right? I joke. I mean, you and I talked about this before, but I drive a Tesla that's full self-driving. It drove me here. So like we're way beyond anything I ever imagined. But it leads me well. And I would invite others to think about like, what do you want your business to look like? What do you want your team to look like? What do you want your family to look like? And since you're fascinated by this future vision idea, I have this picture. This is before ChatGPT. You can now have ChatGPT draw a picture for you, and you could actually have a pretty accurate artistic rendering. But I have this picture of myself it's probably 10 years from today. I'm grilling out on the back deck. My wife is setting the table for dinner. She's got a couple grandkids around her feet, and my son and daughter are playing cornhole with their spouses. There's a boat in the distance. It's over a lake, and after dinner, grilling some fillets or whatever we decide to grill, we take the kids out, the grandkids, and we teach them how to water ski.
Wow.
And so for me, I know we're a little off track, the servant leadership side, but like for me, that my children would want to play cornhole together, that they'd want to come home, as Andy Stanley talks about, when they don't have to anymore.
Yeah.
And that my grandkids would want to be with my wife, that my wife would want to be with me, right? All of those things are kind of a picture that I've put into ChatGPT since.
Yeah.
But that is what kind of leads me into who I want to be as a husband, as a father, and as a leader.
Well, I mean, I think it plays perfectly into servant leadership, because really trying to think through how the decisions you're making today affect the lives of those you're leading or those around you. I mean, it's the epitome of servant leadership.
Sure. It's not about me. I'm grilling. Right. I mean, the steaks are going to be perfect. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, that most of that picture is not about me.
Yeah. I love that. As one of the things that I know that you're starting to do more and more is help other leaders like me and many others maybe listening to this think about how people matter more, right? Yeah. And that's the whole point of the book. What are the biggest things that you're hoping people change about what they're doing today versus where they might be a year from now?
Yeah, I think the resentment that grows with leadership is that what I'm seeing a lot is that I was trained to be a technician of some sort, an accountant or a lawyer or whatever your background is, maybe an MRI tech. And you spent like 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, whatever it is, becoming a technician. And then because you showed up on time, because you're relatively kind to other people, maybe organized, you get named a leader. You're handed a business card. You're a director. You're a manager. You're a team lead, whatever you are. And it's kind of wild. Like the thing you're responsible for is leading people, and you have almost no training and development, and just go pick a bestseller off of Amazon and see if that'll teach you how to lead, you know? And so my hope is that regardless of where you are on the spectrum of leadership, if you're a new leader, that it would equip you. And if you're someone who's been leading for a long time and like, man, I used to work with my peers and now I kind of resent them because all they do is complain up the chain, that I would actually encourage you to look at people in a different light, to look at leadership, and even just this idea that like people are a gift, work is a privilege, and leadership is a stewardship of both those things.
Wow. This doesn't feed exactly into that, but it makes me think of this. A lot of times people do get promoted into roles that they're not ready for.
Sure.
Right? And it's like, as somebody leading people, let's say if I promote somebody within our organization and they were 10 out of 10 at the thing that they did before, and now they move into a leadership role and we're like, oh no, we made a mistake, whatever it is. What do you do? Do you do everything you can to make them succeed in that role? Do you help them adjust back to where you know that they felt like they were thriving? Like, how do you even handle that?
Yeah, the two answers are to have a strong organizational identity and to have a picture of what you're after for leaders. So for us, we have the 3 T's, our key to our approach. We have the thriving mindsets, and we have our core values. And so what happens is you have a bit of a standard. And in lots of organizations, if you don't have a standard, it just becomes about personality. Oh, does Chris like me? Do they get along? They're cousins. They are, they're friends with so-and-so who goes to church together. That's how they got promoted. Versus if we have what we call the block bullseye, we can actually have an honest conversation and say, Chris, you were lighting it on fire when you were doing, XYZ. Now you're in leadership and you seem exhausted and you don't seem to be enjoying it. Your people don't seem to be enjoying it. And we can actually talk about the gap between where you are, where we'd like you to be, and then decide, is this a gap we want to close? Or there are times where we look at someone and just say, we might want to go back to where you were in your previous role because you were thriving there and you're not thriving as a leader.
Those are tough conversations. When I think through the transparency side of the T's, it's like, it's not only transparent about where the organization is going, but it's those difficult conversations. As you think through difficult conversations, obviously people don't like them because they're difficult. What are some examples of things that you've seen be really difficult conversations? You don't have to name names or anything, but where it's like, man, it was so worth having that conversation after the fact.
Yeah. I mean, how many of you would like to have food on your face and have nobody tell you? Right? None of us. And so I think that one of the reasons why difficult conversations are difficult is because we don't have them often enough. Is that when they're done with out of deep belief that I'm challenging you because I one, believe that you're capable, and two, this is the standard that we've set for whatever the area in the business is that it's actually like, sometimes people think of like pushing people, and I would say like we're inviting people. Like, come on, like almost like you would invite a child who's just learning to walk. You don't see them fall and tell them, how embarrassing it is that at whatever age that you can't walk, right? When they stumble, like we grab their hand and we invite them and we beckon them on. And then there are times where the gap can't be closed, that it's just, it's a poor fit. And in that situation, I think it's our job to just have consistent conversations. And one of three things really happen. One, they do close the gap. And Tyler's story is in this book of where we had a very high stakes conversation and he closed the gap in a remarkable way. And so that was really fun. It's a bit rare, but super fun. The second is that they actually depart on their own. They just say, you know what, Chris is not going to give up. Like the gap is here. It's not closing. And he's continuing to talk about it. And then they just magically find themselves giving their 2 weeks notice. And you look at them and you just kind of go, okay, good. Yeah, I didn't have to let you go. You feel you got to hear the areas that I was concerned about. And hopefully you put them into place in the next place you work. And then the third is the most difficult. And that's sitting down and just saying, hey, I think it's time to bring closure to your time in this organization. It's very sensitive, but if you have been very clear throughout, it's more of a natural evolution of a conversation than it is totally shocking someone on a Thursday afternoon. And I think when we've done it well, it shouldn't be a surprise. It shouldn't be more like, I'm disappointed, you're disappointed, and we're bringing close to this chapter, and we're actually encouraging someone as they move on to the next season.
That's one thing that we've talked a lot about over the years is how do you make sure that people aren't surprised by the decisions you make that could affect their life and their livelihood? One of the things that I think I personally have always struggled with, and maybe others listening have, is two people can be looking at the same scenario and see drastically different stories, right? Of like what is actually playing out. I could be saying, this is what I want. And somebody could say, that's exactly what I'm doing. And it's not what I feel. How do you even handle that?
Yeah. I mean, when we have the organizational identity that we've talked about, and I am going to be the one who's assessing the gap. I mean, your opinion is interesting. It's just not all that compelling. It doesn't mean that we can't have a conversation about it, but I am going to be the referee in this situation. But at least when we give a clear path, I've never had that happen before. Okay. I've never had someone look at me and go, we've talked about blame and responsibility, which is one of our thriving mindsets. And I reference the way that they're blaming someone and they just go, I totally disagree. I've never had that happen in my career. But again, it's when you have the standard or when you have some clear values, it's much easier to hold people accountable to those than when it's very preferential and it's a creative. We're talking about principles and the implementation of these principles more than we're talking about deliverables and quality. And that's a different set. Very important, but I am, for lack of a better word, I am the referee at the end of the day in that one,
No, that's so good. How did you go about building your leadership team, right? Because to build an organization and move it from 30 million to significantly more, that takes amazing leaders all around.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the first step is to embody it ourselves. Like when John Maxwell talks about the speed of the leader is the speed of the team, totally believe that's true. And I believe the blank of the leaders, the blank of the team, and in every way, the integrity, the innovation, the ambition, fill in the blank. And that over time, that's the team we will have. And so we have 8 leaders. And again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it goes right back to our organizational identity. These are people that we have given them more, and they have continued to shape the future, which is one of our thriving mindsets. They've carried an abundant lens versus a scarcity lens. They've taken responsibility. They work well with others. They honor, and they ultimately live out our mission really, really well. And that's what leads to promotion in the organization. And so again, our hope is to reverse engineer and demystify so that when someone's finding success, we don't have to, it doesn't go back to like a kickball contest in 5th grade. It's like this bullseye is the guide for success in our organization.
Right. Are you calling that out all the time when you see it? Or how do people, when you have a team so big, hundreds of people, how do you actually call that out where everyone is seeing that and calling that out in each other?
If there was one thing that keeps me awake at night, it is the thought that the person who is reporting into a leader who's maybe 6 layers from myself, that their experience is drastically different. It's the risk of writing a book, right?
Yeah.
People matter. Yeah, right. If people mattered last Thursday, my boss wouldn't have said this to me. And so that is one of the tricky parts. Frankly, it's one of the reasons I've written the book, is to hold us accountable and to invite our leaders into living it out. But yeah, it is so important that people don't leave organizations, they leave leaders. And so it's so crucial that each one of our leaders is seeking to embody imperfectly, but intently the 3 T's, the thriving mindsets, and ultimately walking out our mission and treating people as you'd like to be treated, treating people as they'd like to be treated. Sometimes I think we make it harder than it needs to be.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about your style and things you've done is, well, there's 2. One, you share a lot of stories, and I know you do this in the book, but 2, there's stories about other people and how they really have elevated the organization, right? And I know elevating the leaders around you has made you a better leader.
Yeah.
How do you help? And maybe it's just you just keep grinding it in, but like, is it hard for people to think through, I need to elevate the people around me, therefore I might be elevated, versus just have that self-driving mindset that it's like, I need to look out for myself?
Yeah. I mean, Simon Sinek talks about in the military, you sacrifice your life and you get medals. In the corporate world, you sacrifice others and you get promotions, right? And and there's right toward the end of the book, there's a poem by Lao Tzu, Chinese philosopher, and it talks about going to the people, loving them, living with them, working alongside them. But my favorite is at the very end, it says, of the best leaders, when the task is done, the job is complete, the people will say, we did it ourselves. And so that really, even though it's at the end of the book, it is deep within me, is that this isn't about me. This is about other people's stories and ultimately them carrying ownership, and really amazing things start to happen when we lead like that.
Wow. When you think through this message, and obviously it's been important within your organization, and I know it's becoming important for a lot of other people to think about, what does the future look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally,
you and the vision of People Matter and where it's going.
Yeah, we're at the starting point. The launch is March 3rd. And so I hope it's just like I talked about. It's an invitation, is like to close the gap between our intention and our impact. And so I imagine when people are putting organizational identities together, no one's asked me this question yet, but I think in a number of years that people would want to become People Matter companies, that they would recognize that there's a legacy, there's value and worth in putting people first. And subsequently, performance has followed. We're not talking about just the soft, ooey gooey water slides and smoothie days. We're talking about challenging people to become more than they ever dreamed of, taking ownership and moving a business forward in significant ways. And my dream is that they look back in 10 years. We have a story, Chris Chirac, who's one of our leaders today. He came to our organization for a summer job 20 years ago. And he thought he was going to go back to LA and be in film school. And his first day was picking up acorns off the ground at our headquarters. And 20 years later, he's leading a global healthcare sales organization.
Wow.
With a significant team. And so like seeing stories like that And so when people say culture, like it's the soft stuff, we have some people in our organization who've been here 20 years who are some of the most knowledgeable people in the world when it comes to imaging parts or imaging equipment or whatever it is. I can't think of anything that's more enjoyable than that.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I want to finish with 10 rapid fire questions.
Okay, 10.
And you just say the first thing that comes to mind. No wrong answer.
Okay.
Who's the first person you think of when I say servant leadership?
Patrick Lencioni.
Love it. 5 words that most describe you.
I want to honor people well.
All right. Favorite book or author?
Oh man, I feel like it's a cheating answer, but 5 Dysfunctions of a Team was really significant in my life.
So good. Favorite food?
Cheetos and cherry Coke.
Love that. Favorite thing to do in your free time?
I love to wake surf with my family.
Wow. Any good spots for that?
We're up in Fenton, Michigan is where we wake surf.
Wow. What's a surprising fact about you?
My mom had her tubes tied before I was born.
Wow. That is surprising.
Yeah.
Glad you're here.
I am too. I'm glad to be here.
Favorite place you've been?
I think Greece.
Okay. Anywhere in the world you want to go that you have not been?
I would love to play golf in Ireland on a non-windy day.
That's going to be tough.
Yeah, I know. That's why I have the caveat.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Honor your mother, no regrets.
And finally, podcast on servant leadership. A lot of people are listening to this through the lens of servant leadership. Why is servant leadership something that they should care about?
Because people matter more. I mean, investing in people and sacrificing for people and choosing people and honoring people is worth it every single time.
Wow. Well, Josh, thank you for being on the podcast and making the time. I'm so pumped for our audience to read your book. We're going to throw it in the description for people to see if they want to go read it. And just thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be with you.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Servant Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss an update. Be sure to check out the servantleadershippodcast.org for more updates and additional bonus content.